again, I'm going to do the same. In a second, Shamsh will appear here, and you can check out, his details. There's a lot to read. Trust me, I've done it about this guy. So please go do that. I'm gonna skip the big introduction in the interest of time, because we only have a couple of minutes, and the idea of cyber and especially security probably is as popular as it's ever been for all the right and some wrong reasons, and we'll come to that in a second. Shamsh, if we look at what you do, and clearly, with what your Vita reads, you're a proven, seasoned, not trying to call you old, expert on the matter. But if you look back maybe 5 years ago, would you have expected cyber, and not just cyber, but all forms of digital security, to take off the way that it has? Was that on the horizon quite early, or is it something that even you sometimes looking back think, gosh darn it, it's gone very quick?
First of all, thank you for having me here, and it's a pleasure to speak here, and thank you all for attending this short session. So if I look back 5 years, 2019, look, it was there. It was there when Wyndham got hacked in 2008.
Yeah.
It was there when Starwood got hacked in 2014, Marriott, and so IHG, Hilton. So it's been there, but it has our presence, and have we really taken seriousness on this? I think that's where it was.
Yeah, and we'll come to the nitty-gritties in a second. I want to talk to you very quickly before we start kind of get the mindset going. If we look at data and the role of data, and maybe also how that's transcended over time, how has that role changed? Because I remember when we talked very briefly yesterday and we met, it was one of the things that we briefly touched on was, the role of this whole digital world has monumentally changed. How have you seen that? And specifically, like I said, tie that back to me, for the data, the role of data. Is it the new oil?
That's what everyone says. It's the new currency.
Yeah.
So if you look at it,
we start talking about oil, the screen turns off. That's how it works in the Middle East.
We couldn't fund it.
Yeah.
Look, at the end of the day, if we go back to the basics, what is cybersecurity? Cybersecurity is defending internet-connected devices through hardware, software, and data. And the data is the most critical part. And when we look at it, and we heard this throughout the last 2 days, everyone's excited on AI and augmented reality and so forth, but there's always a but. And the but is that, but what are we doing from a responsible AI? What are we doing from a secure AI? What are we doing from secure storage of data? And data is so critical, as we've seen. It damages reputation, it can lower stock prices, it can cause government investigations, regulatory fines, and so forth. And when we keep talking about the customer journey or the guest journey and so forth, I think that is where we miss out. And we miss out, why? Because a lot of times our security teams are closed in a box. And they're closed in a box, and no one talks to them, and no one interacts with them, and they don't organically grow with us, especially in large organizations. So when we look at data can get affected or compromised by the PII, the personal identifiable information, through POS terminals, through credit card terminals, through hotel Wi-Fi, through IoT. We were talking about robo vacuums and stuff. So I think we have to really seriously look at all of this.
Would you agree with me that the fact that the world is probably as digital as it's ever been and as tech-driven as it's ever been, and all these new elements that you've just mentioned, from Internet of the Things to technology to data-driven to cyber and whatever it may be, has that also opened us up to a lot more threats that perhaps wasn't talked enough about?
100%. And with 5G, things are going faster. You can move certain things, data so much more quicker through secure and unsecure tunnels. It's going to continue growing. And when kids are born now, they're born knowing how to use an iPad. So it's just going to get more and more digitized.
I invite you to come to Germany one day, where I'm from. We're still on 3G there, so where things are a little slower where we are. But that's a different story. Talk to me a little bit about a topic that I know you're passionate about, because again, we had a conversation yesterday, is the fact that the world is as globalized as ever. And if we take the hospitality example, Shamsh, clearly there's global players, and we have about, we're talking about hospitality, all of a sudden the screen comes back, it's out. Let's say there's about 10 very big global hospitality players. And when they come from different countries. There's some Americans in there. There's some Europeans in there. There's some Chinese in there. Most of them will like to bring their own technology into whatever part of the world that they're coming to. How do you feel about that? Because there might be, a technology that might be market ready and well established and used in the US might not naturally adapt that easily to whatever is happening and going on in the Middle East or in parts of Europe. How do you see that? The fact that companies, and especially in hospitality, are bringing their technologies and trying to, with all due respect, force them down the throats of different other regions that they might not natively have been designed for.
Look, as a technologist myself, I wouldn't want to be restricted around a certain bubble, because R&D basically, with R&D we can, we can get to the moon and even further, right? So the whole idea, I think, is that if there are frameworks, if everyone can work through government regulatory rules. We had a great example of that with the EU when GDPR was rolled out. They were the first for protecting people's data, and then other countries piggybacked off that because at least there was a structure. They may have tweaked it and so forth. So I do feel that, especially with AI, if you're looking at it, there's some really, really amazing frameworks already out there by Microsoft, by IBM, and so forth. So if we can just encourage them to say, work in those frameworks, at least have those barriers. I think that'll at least give us some comfort, and especially in the cybersecurity space, that this is going to be okay, not then just the wild, wild west where everyone just does whatever they want.
Talk to me about the wild, wild west, because we don't have to look back too far to see that there's still also a lot of shady stuff going on, and that will probably continue to be the case. But talk to me a little bit about what you've seen from your time working in different parts of the world as well. How are we combating is maybe the wrong word because it's a little too forceful, but how are we trying to deal with that shady stuff that's going on? And we don't have to go back too far where there's bigger trials in the US that have been going on, and also in Europe with data that or money for that matter that has been simply vaporized out of thin air. Are we aware enough about what's going on? Because there's also, I think, a lot of things that people like you who have a strong interest and a strong drive in this, some of the stories you could tell, we could fill an entire FHS day with that. Are we talking enough about the cons of all this data and cybersecurity threat process that's going on?
I don't think so, and I believe that it is because, more importantly, for people who do admit it, for organizations that do admit it, hospitality or at large, there's so much reputational damage. So then a lot of times it also comes up when, it happened 6 months ago, it happened 8 months ago. And by the way, we just plugged in the gaps and filled in the holes where,
500,000 data sets were lost.
And just a convenient email, we're sorry for your loss of data.
Yeah, and so let's stick on that, data privacy. Buzzwords, we've been talking about, it's been all about buzzwords this morning in this room, so let's kick on that one. Something that is very popular in Europe, in some parts of Europe anyways, less popular still to this day in other parts of the world. How do you see data privacy developing in the next couple of years?
I feel that there are going to be governments and organizations that are going to be the forefront. UAE is definitely one of those. EU is, parts of EU have also already started working on that. We're seeing that come up in Southeast Asia. Maybe not as much in North America as one would have expected. But I do feel that this is going to become the next area that we'll have to focus on, especially when we started off saying data is potentially the new currency in the future. Hopefully the screen doesn't go off again.
We should. Please, guys. Sorry, we didn't say oil. Perfect. And then connectivity, also something I know that is very trendy also at the moment is, yes, I have a data set here, but can I connect it to something else? Are there correlations I can take perhaps? How do you see connectivity and synergies developing? And is there a risk there as well? As more and more people exchanged or entities start exchanging data, it's more difficult to keep track. Wait, he has my data set and then I pass it on to him and he's working with a third party that is actually doing something else. How is that connected? Because most of the time synergies, probably people would argue, are a good thing. Is there a risk here?
There's definitely a risk because there's multiple copies all over, and we don't know how everyone manages it. And I think that's where my organization and myself are really pushing why the use of blockchain is so important,
Yeah.
where we keep it centralized or decentralized, but in a way that it is accessible to all, and then it can be used anonymously or with the actual information of that individual knowingly as well.
Yeah. Give me some of the topics that people come to you most at Zorro with. What are some of the things where you think, oh, here's another one?
The most frequented one is, hey, we've been hacked.
Yeah.
We need to pay some crypto. How do we get all our information back and not pay crypto?
Yeah. And do you advise paying crypto?
I've not till date.
Not till date. Okay, very good. Shamsh, I want to touch on a little bit of which I think some of you might not know about this gentleman, but you've advised some fairly well-known people around the globe on some things that have to do with cybersecurity and so on and so forth, notably in North America, and I will let you share that in a second of yourself. From your time of advising governments, and I know it's not just been the North American ones, but from your time of advising governments, and I realize you probably can't share all the dirty details with us as much as we would like to hear them, but how do you see government roles transcending in this as well? When you know, if we think back to your advising part during the Obama administration, perhaps now in the Middle East, explain to me how government's thinking has also been changed, because I imagine if we look again back 10 years ago, you know, cybersecurity was somewhere in the small prints on page 642, whereas perhaps now that may have changed.
Look, at the end of the day, it's a national security issue when your citizens' information is in the hands of the bad guys, and the bad guys could be in your own country, but in other parts of the world as well. Different governments react in different ways at different speeds, based on the type of government, the setup, and so forth. But there are some trailblazers like the UAE, and I'm so proud to be living here and being part of this ecosystem as well, because they're really the forefront of that.
Yeah. I know that I was, again, as we spoke yesterday, I know that I was okay to ask for you to at least share one of the stories that you've experienced kind of during your time in advising governments, and perhaps you can, and I believe it's a story from the North American world, perhaps you can give me an idea of when something happens that is a threat to national security, and that does happen probably more frequently than people would think. Walk me through the various entities that all of a sudden then get involved and attached with the example that you're going to share, because I know that we might think, okay, that's a cybersecurity issue, and then we talk to the internet authorities of that country, but there's actually a lot more that plays into that.
I'm happy to just share very briefly. One of the experiences that I enjoyed actually being part of was when the Colonial Pipeline got hacked in the east coast of the U.S., when the whole fuel or petrol line was hijacked. And
what year was this, roughly? Must have been...
This was just prior to COVID, I
Must have been
believe.
18, 19, something like that?
Yeah. And I was on call within 30 minutes with Department of Homeland Security, the White House, and so forth, and a few other agencies, because this was literally a matter of national security. And
people, just for context, people couldn't fuel their car anymore. There was no way to
all
get
the
gas.
way from the east coast of Florida all the way up to DC, and so forth. And it was like, help us get it back online, and yesterday, not today. So that we went through that whole sense of urgency, paying that ransom, not paying that ransom. How do you get back on track? And so forth, and how there was things coming, being decided at how can the west part of the United States bring in supplies just in case. So FEMA was involved, and everyone was involved. But ultimately, it came down to weaknesses in the system, and I think that's when that was a great wake-up call. That you have to continue to evolve as you're evolving your economy and everything else. Even if you look at hospitality, the tech, and so forth, you have to remember. There is the core foundation, which you need to make sure you address, which is locking your doors at night and closing all your windows.
Yeah, very good. Final question in the interest of time, because there's a big, bright red zero here for us already. What do we need to tell people to avoid having that pitfall of we're only going to start thinking, and I feel like that's a particular challenge in cyber and data, we're only going to start thinking about something when it's gone to hell. When something like that happens, when something bad happens, then we think, ooh, well actually, realistically, we could have probably thought about that 2 years ago. Give me some ideas on how we can change that mindset when speaking to people that are in that decision, position of looking at things ahead of time rather than, with all due respect, when it's too late.
Let me take the wise words of my doctors. It's better to start exercising now so you can live a better and healthier life in the future than worrying about being in the OR room when it gets critical.
Yeah, when it's too late. Perfect. Shamsh, we've just got another 4 minutes. I've got 2 more questions for you. Excellent.
Sounds good.
When we talk about adapting and looking at new ways of adapting, how are we doing in hospitality? Because I know that you're not just involved with hospitality tech, or probably less so than with other parts of cybersecurity. How are we doing in hospitality? And be brutally honest with me. We can take it. We have a strong ego in hospitality. If we're terrible, then please do say.
Can I ask you to ask that question again?
Yes. How good are we at adapting to new technologies, new cyber threats, new cyber ideas in hospitality? Are we good compared to others? Are we?
We're good at keeping quiet.
Very good. Yeah, we love that for us. Yeah.
And so because that's our business to sell that. So hide everything under the rug is
strong point.
Is a strong point, I think, in the hospitality industry. Look, I think it is a very difficult industry to also.
Why? Why is it difficult?
Because expectations.
Okay.
The human expectations are so high. When you go into one hotel and then you go into another hotel, oh, but it's not like that, and it is like that. So I was reading National Geographic's top hotels of the world this morning, and man, you can't compete with those if you want to be at the top in the multiple different the segments, and everyone just has to one up each other, and then the second thing with expectation is, especially what I'm seeing in the new millennials and the new generation, there's less loyalty in brands, be it in retail, be it in hospitality, be it in anything. So it's like, I had a bad experience, I move on. So it's not like we all keep on. I consider I'm still part of that group, but I'm still part of the older ones. I keep looking at where am I on my Bonvoy app? How many nights do I have? What's my status? How can I use it? I think that's also changing.
What do you think of the Bonvoy app? We'll pass it on to any of the Marriott members.
Yeah.
It's okay?
It's been treating me well.
It's been treating you well? It's been giving you an upgrade? Perfect. Okay. Final question, Shamsh, in the interest of time. Walk me through the role that you see cyber playing in kind of the next 2 or 3 years in hospitality. Traditionally, the way that companies are set up, there's usually some form of data responsibility now. Data privacy officers and so on and so forth. In the big organizations, there would be a cyber team, perhaps not necessarily a cyber security team. Is that something that you see that's coming on the horizon? We just talked beforehand about integrations in the panel before, which are, good for us in many ways, but also bring up a lot more possibilities to lose data. How do you see the role of that changing in hospitality, or is it going to change?
I don't think they have a choice. I think they're going to have to be very clear that there has to be a cybersecurity team, a department, if they don't have it, that's on 24/7. But more importantly, not just having them just doing the protection work. It is deeply integrating them through all the different the components or parts of their organization, all the way down to the property level. It is extremely critical because it is that one door open or that one window that's slightly ajar that is where you get a DDoS attack, you get phishing attacks getting in and so forth.
Yeah. Add on to that, and then really the final question: property versus corporate, a conversation that also in hotel groups is never ending. Where does the responsibility lie? Where would you suggest, as an expert in this who's seen a lot of different attacks in a lot of different formats, where does it lie? Does it lie with both of them? Is it one that top down, bottom up? What's your process, the thinking process?
It's both of them.
Yeah.
When you are given the privilege to manage somebody else's data, it is our right to demand that you take care of it. So it's everyone.
I like the idea of privilege of getting someone's data. It's a very good way of putting it. Ladies and gents, any questions? Now is the time. If you want to know where your data has been, he can answer it. So please do ask any questions you might have. There is none. Shams, thank you so much.
Thank
Have
you.
a good day. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.